Hello, everybody. Welcome to With Thunder's Applause, a podcast where two friends get together to discuss the events and ideas shaping our uncertain future. I am your host, Steve, along with my co-host, Zach. What's up, dude?
Hello. Nothing much. Just Thursday, so I'm continuing to do my Move It classes through the VA.
Cool.
I'm convinced this one guy is trying to pass off housework as a way to lose weight. Because he's like, I got 20 acres, and when I was 70, like up until I turned 72, I could do it all by myself. But I just kind of slowed down. Maybe I need more testosterone, and and he's like, but if anybody wants to get some exercise, you can come help me burn brush. And I'm like, that's a man who's trying to get other people to do work for him, disguising it as exercise. It's like, hey, you can walk my dogs. Yes, I could. I will not. There's a reason I don't have a dog.
Yeah, but it might be a cool relationship to spark up.
Yeah.
Might even be able to, get paid to do it.
Yeah,
You might be
it's a fun class too. I like all the people there. Just about everybody is like substantially older than I am, like at least 20 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and if he's got a bunch of shit to do and he's just too fucking old, you'd be like, dude, I can fucking push stuff into a fire.
Yeah.
You're like, I'll do that for $20 an hour or whatever, $15 an hour or whatever you choose,
Yeah. You'd be like, what?
Cool. So what do we got? Today's Shooting the Poodoo, episode 47?
45.
45. I'm always wrong on that one.
We'll get there.
I just need a sticky note.
It's not like I number it on the tracker or anything like that. Let's see. Today
I was looking for speaking of numbered episodes and stuff, I was thinking of that We're So Fucked song. I could not find it. I was on my phone though, so I might not have been able to search the document as thoroughly. But I was trying to find it because I couldn't find it in the YouTube search. I'm like, would that have gotten pulled down for fucking copyright because they parody Let It Be? I don't think so. I think a parody is permitted under copyright.
No, parodies are perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see. Today we're gonna do
What do we got?
House in Arlington, Virginia, going mega boom, like mega boom. I was impressed.
I was surprised this came across because like Brooke hadn't heard of it, and I'm like, that's interesting. Usually shit like this goes pretty viral unless the government doesn't want it to. But then again, this is ABC News talking about it, so who the fuck knows?
I mean, I looked into it a bit, and the guy is not all well. Most likely was.
We'll talk about it because I did not get to look into it too deeply.
Yeah. Then we also got something about Israel buying more weapons from the U.S., which, of course, if you flip that around, that's the U.S. selling weapons to Israel, for genocide. It's good shit. We'll talk about it.
Is that a clip about white phosphorus artillery by chance? Okay.
They did. Yeah. It's
very cool.
But that's at the beginning. So, we could just discuss that ahead of time. We got a couple things about COP28, including, what it did and did not do. It seems to be a cop out, this year, as it is a lot of years. And then we'll have a nice little video at the end. I'm sorry. We'll have a short article about 5 reasons the world is fucked. That's right. It's a listicle. We're going to review it. And then we got a fun little video at the end.
I feel like some of the cool things I came across got put on that sheet. And were never intended to like be an episode per se.
Make the cut.
I think the 5 reasons we're fucked. I thought would make a really like a standalone, but let's see how we're looking on time.
Yeah, that's true. And then that's it. So we can definitely start off with Home Goes Boom.
So this is a short. This is a short that yes. I came across on my feed, and it really kind of blew my mind in a punny way, I guess.
Yeah. It also blew the house up.
Yeah, because this short tells you almost nothing. It looks like there's a standoff between police and someone in a house, and then the house explodes. We have a news clip that'll go into more detail of what happened, and we'll discuss.
And then I found about his social media posts. But yeah, it starts off so innocently. There's just police lights and yelling.
Just police lights and yelling.
Innocent.
Come out with your hands up.
Yeah, exactly. Not on your life, coppers. it hangs for so long. And this was recorded by someone who is just a
It was in an
neighbor who's
adjacent
nearby.
building.
Yeah, yeah, it was a neighbor. And of course, they're like, "Ooh, nice. Fun to be part of this." Yo! Demolished.
Nothing left.
Yeah, like that house exploded upward and collapsed downward. It is gone. It is impressive how little is left of it. But yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
Just on the other hand, oh my god.
the thing is that I'm really surprised that didn't like break out windows and shit. Like you didn't hear any glass shattering nearby in that photo.
No, and looking into it more, like a police car had a little bit of debris go through its window and shattered the window, but like other than that, there were like minor injuries from concussive force, and like messed up houses, obviously from the ones nearby, and then flaming, falling, and debris, which is never good. But they had firefighters standing by, and in fact, the firefighters had turned off the gas to the house.
Oh, did it?
Yeah,
Did they?
yeah. I don't know if that's standard, police are about to raid your house stuff, because there was SWAT standing by.
I think this still explain why they
Yeah.
got a search warrant for the house with explosives. So that might have been something that as the emergency management team
Yeah.
got together, which includes fire. It would include, probably others, police detectives, possibly from state officials and stuff for
That
something
makes
like
sense.
that, right? Like, and obviously a judge was involved, right? If they got a
Yeah, that's
warrant,
true. Yeah, they did get a
then
warrant in it.
it seems to me that they'd be like, oh, we think there might be explosives, and the fire department's like, okay, cool, we're authorized to shut their gas off if we
Yeah.
think there might be a potential danger, and just doing it legal beagle, which is great.
Yeah.
So let's
Here-
see what
Today.
the
So
local
what are
news
they
has to say.
looking for,
Yeah.
and what's next in this investigation?
Well, Arlington County Police say officers, emergency crews, and even utility workers, they're going to be on scene here for quite some time. This is still a very active investigation. And if you take a look behind me, you can still see some of those officers creating a very large perimeter around this neighborhood. Now, this investigation is going to have several facets of it. One of them is going to be determining exactly why the suspect, they believe, was shooting those rounds of flare guns inside the home before that home erupted.
Yeah, that was something that didn't get covered, but I believe it was upwards of 30 flares throughout.
I think it gets covered in one of these clips.
Okay.
Told by Arlington County Police that they believe he shot anywhere between 30 and 40 rounds of that flare gun from inside the home, possibly sparking and igniting that home, which eventually caused it to explode. Now, another thing Arlington County Police...
Homes don't just explode.
No,
Homes burn down.
Flares don't do that.
Yeah, flares don't do that. Fire, normal fire doesn't do that. Things burn.
Especially when the gas is turned off.
Yeah. And there's not enough gas.
A
left
flare
in the
might do
pipes.
that if you had the gas running and the house was full of gas.
Or if you shot it directly at a propane tank. But I mean, so far I've looked into
Perhaps.
it, and they haven't released like a report on.
I
why
watch a
or
lot
anything
of
like that yet.
gun stuff on YouTube, and I've seen people shoot fucking propane tanks and oxygen tanks and shit. It takes a very large caliber bullet
Just to pierce.
it. I don't know about close range because obviously they were testing, so they weren't shooting it like point blank. They didn't want to hurt themselves, but like, I think it was 30 caliber, great, like big bullets.
Yeah.
Like I think it took a fucking 50 cal to fucking punch a hole in it at like 50 yards or whatever.
Yeah. So it'll probably come out eventually. What exactly the accelerant was, because like that's fucking nuts. Like that is like like large. Oh, I have propane tanks to do my heat during the winter. That's like that size explosion.
No. To take all of the roof and siding and basically turn it into splinters is an enormous amount of force.
It's a lot of fucking energy.
Because like we see explosions happen inside houses too. It'll blow out windows. You might have like it might flame out, right? But like generally speaking, like it doesn't splinter like that into millions of pieces. Like
Yeah.
it's fucking wild. Anyway, continue.
Yep.
are saying that they are investigating is whether or not the suspect was in the home by himself. Initially, they said that they believed that he was, in fact, home alone. That is something they're still trying to determine, given, obviously, the complexity of that situation, given how extensive that explosion was that really made a mess of the entire area, Diane.
So, walk us through this. How extensive is the damage, at least, so far being assessed, and how's the community reacting?
Well, just from that really shocking video we saw, we just saw how really massive that explosion was. And another thing that we saw is we really saw those pieces of debris really fly into the air. And eventually, we know that what goes up must come down. And we know, other than those, the house that's been reduced to rubble, there was actually a police car that actually had a broken window because one of those pieces of debris came down and smashed that window. Now, again, ever since last night to even right now, their community members here have been out and about in the public, really openly talking about this massive explosion. Again, it's something that one person even said that he's lived here for 50 years and has never seen or even heard or felt anything like this. That was a big part of what community members were saying, was that they could feel the concussion from this blast from inside their homes all throughout this neighborhood, sometimes as far as even a quarter of a mile away. Now, the community members have also said that one of the main things that they saw from yesterday was that large plume of orange smoke and fire.
That's something I take umbrage with. Yeah, I'll go with that. Is saying the orange smoke. Is the smoke orange, or is the smoke mostly white with orange fire?
Reflective fire.
Yeah, like nitpicking, but a poor word choice, I think.
Emanating from this blast that could be seen for miles. So many community members were posting on social media showing that large fire and really just reacting to something that they said that they were really terrified on the onset because they didn't know what was going on. Now, at that point, we do know that the Arlington County Police, did tell several community members to shelter in place at the time of the blast, obviously for their own safety. They have since been told that they can return to their homes.
Yeah. Fucking crazy, and I love it. So this guy is not exactly well.
Yeah, I don't know. You're going to talk about social media posts. My initial reaction, I think another clip I might have put in the tracker, but we don't need to talk about, basically says you're going to talk about social media posts, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what I know, because I didn't look into any of that, from another clip that might be in the show notes, was the police and fire station is on the other side from this neighborhood, is opposite. It's across a like an athletic field or something, like a public park basically. And an officer at this public safety complex saw flares, and then people in the park came over to be like, hey, a fucking flare was just dropped into the field when kids are playing soccer or whatever. And they were all worried because it was such abnormal behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when they went over and they're like, oh, there's plastic bags covering all the windows. We can't see what's happening inside. So they went and got a warrant, and they came back to serve the warrant, knowing someone was inside because they were still shooting flares. Yeah. That's when they were kind of doing the standoff thing, being like, come out with your hands up kind of thing. And then the house exploded. And the guy's name was Yu. And I was joking with my partner last night. I'm like, I wonder how long it takes for the for the right-wing internet to be like, this guy was a Chinese sleeper cell.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's true. I can say from, reading through just a little bit of what he posted online, he is a man full of paranoia. And
real quick, I also agree that he would not be a sleeper cell, because why would you spend so much time making a life to where you just feel like part of the community while you're actually plotting something and loyal to some other foreign force? Why would you give that up by just deciding, you know what, fuck it, I just got really drunk and I'm going to shoot flares,
blow myself up?
Window. Anyway, not plausible. If you were really a sleeper cell, you probably wouldn't engage in reckless shit.
Like that. It'd be impossible. I like if the explosion had just happened, but nothing before it. Cool, like an accident happened.
Yeah,
Maybe he
exactly.
was a sleeper agent, but no, this is just really out of left field behavior.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about what his social media, because this got published, right? Like people found his social media and they were like,
Yeah,
"Oh shit, this
yeah.
dude was a wackadoo."
Yeah, his LinkedIn page had a whole bunch of rants about like the FBI, the CIA. He thought that his neighbors were like coordinating to take him down. Go ahead.
Oh, nothing. He's just a
Okay.
deep stater. It sounds like.
Yeah, he claimed on his LinkedIn to have worked for like some government or government agencies, but he had a great distrust. Here's a great clip from him. It says the U.S. is the world's biggest terrorist, and he cites Noam Chomsky, and he says fuck the
Uh-oh.
police, and cites NWA, and then he hashtag purge them. And then he says, former head of global security with CFI-US experience. So, I mean, he was basically like on his LinkedIn page, where people go to be professional and try to get jobs. He was ranting on his LinkedIn page about his beliefs. And he said that, he was on the CFI-US, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. And so, like, basically claimed to have gotten some knowledge that made him distrustful while he was doing that sort of work.
Yeah, that's plausible though, for real.
Yeah, and then he was of course described as a quiet person who didn't interact with people, and he did go so far as to put aluminum foil over his windows, and he has chased people with knives, so not 100% stable, I'd say. And then you do, of course, have to wonder, like, was he just like, a deep stater who like had a big plan to, take something down and got drunk and fucked it up? Like, could this have been, much, much worse? That's kind of what interests me.
Yeah, I'm curious what the investigation actually turns up, because it wasn't
Yeah.
boxes of flares that exploded like that.
No.
And so my curiosity is maybe there was there is some validity to this idea that maybe there's a plot or something.
Yeah.
Or just a madman, because didn't this happen in wasn't it in fucking Nashville?
This is in Arlington.
No, this was in Arlington, Virginia.
Oh, sorry.
Which the foil, in my opinion, could have easily been just either like electromagnetic, like he was just paranoid that people were surveilling him, but also could be like to reflect fucking infrared radiation or thermal radiation from a nuke, right? Because I'm considering taking similar steps to harden my house, not foil, but other kinds of steps to harden my house against not just nukes, but stray bullets and shit like that.
Yeah, it would definitely make it harder for anyone with infrared imaging to see into your house as well.
Yeah. You'd probably see through a wall though, honestly, depending on how good your equipment is, right?
Who knows how much foil there was on the inside of the house.
That's true. All right, yeah. So he seemed to be probably definitely mentally disturbed. So
he accuses neighbors of being spies and buffers, to keep, or basically saying that the ruling class uses buffers and handlers in order to get our information, and that way they can stay anonymous. And it's like, no, man, they do that every time you pick up a phone. Like, much more believable that we're all giving away our information than the government has literally 3 to 4 people just looking at you. Like, maybe if you think you're that important.
I would make a mental note. I would like to do maybe a Monday deep dive into home security systems, and I don't know, there's just a lot that goes through my mind when I think about those, because it's one thing to have a doorbell camera so you could see people steal packages, I guess.
And the idea is you can turn the information over to the police, but most of the ones we have nowadays are connected to the internet, and they have all in the past agreed to turn over data to the police.
But I was looking at a lot of people are putting 4-way, like 360-degree cameras up in places on their property that surveil like the whole fucking street. And I'm just like, and it's like, so I don't know. We should do a whole deep dive on it and maybe try and understand it and have a more in-depth conversation about what that means for civil liberties. But like, it makes me deeply uncomfortable, and it just basically makes me want to do, like, every time I walk by someone's house and they're like getting in and out of their car, I just want to start filming them and be like, "You're on a fucking public street." You know, like, why are you filming me? Why are you filming me? It's like, you're on a public street and you're fucking filming me just walking by when I walk my dog or whatever, or take a walk with my girlfriend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're filming me all the fucking time. So like, you've already established precedence. It's fair game to fucking film you whenever you're in public space.
Hey, if that's what you want to use your time for.
I mean, what I want to do is I want to understand why people who are like, my civil liberties are under attack by these communists and these lefty woke motherfuckers. I want to understand why they think their civil liberties are under attack when they are participating in and they are self-funding the tools of their own oppression. That's what I want to understand. I want to understand why they are spending their own fucking financial resources to provide more surveillance for the fucking police state. Because that's what they do when this person I mentioned last episode, someone got hit in front of my car. The reason the cops knocked on the door is because they were looking to see if anybody had a camera. Of course, it turns out the lady 2 doors over from me not just has like a doorbell camera, they have a fucking camera mounted up that doesn't even like look at their space. It points out to the street. They want to know every person who walks by their house.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm like, are you fucking pedophiles? Because like a bunch of fucking high school kids walk through here. Like,
I mean, I know a good way to accomplish the same thing. You basically talk to your neighbors. It's a weird concept, I know.
What's that?
Oh, you could get to know like everyone who's in your neighborhood by just talking to your neighbors. And
indeed. So even kind of what do you call that? Neighborhood watch or community information sharing has now all been privatized, where everybody pays a company to buy the equipment to surveil their neighborhood, and then they go on to these privately owned mediated spaces like Nextdoor to gossip about all the shit that happened and post videos of people they think are doing something suspicious. And you're like, it looks like he's fucking walking his dog. It's like, I don't know, he walked by here twice. Is it possible he walked somewhere and then turned around and walked back where he came from? It's like, no, he's staking my house out. He walked by that way and then came back. It's like, you fucking paranoid pieces of shit. And then you're like, you don't want people to do that. You don't want people to move through a space that's not even yours. It's public.
Yeah.
If you want to live in a gated community, live in a gated community.
And I definitely think that is it. And if they could afford it, they would. But they can't. So they do the ghetto gated community and they gate it with cameras. And people have been trained for the longest time. I mean, you can definitely trace it all the way back to the 50s and, McCarthyism. You can say that, people are afraid of each other. And it is a well executed, propaganda to basically get us to spy on each other and do it gladly.
Yeah, let's fucking dig into that subject a little bit deeper.
Will do.
At any rate, we're moving on. Oh shit! I didn't even know we were talking about these. I had this clip here.
You put the video in there. You gave me the time and everything.
I did give you time. Did you find out where I started? It was a little before 8?
Yeah, I called it about 7:29, and I forgot to rewind it when I was done.
Perfectly. So that's about 2 minutes or a minute and a half?
Yeah.
I'm going to go get a drink and some water.
To listen to what he had to say to Christiane Amanpour.
What was so different that made you resign publicly?
Well, in all the arms transfers I've been a part of discussing before, including to Israel, there has always been space for discussion and debate. You can raise concerns about how are these arms going to be used. Do we have confidence that laws of war, laws of proportionality are going to be respected? Do we have concerns about some of the units that these arms might be going to and their track records? What was different here was that there was no discussion. There was no space for that discussion. There was simply an approach of essentially the barn doors are open, and that remains the case. The Wall Street Journal reported just in the last couple of days that America has transferred over 4,000 dumb bombs to Israel, several thousand guidance kits, and 45,000 artillery shells. So the barn doors remain open, and while I'm certainly encouraged to hear what Vice President Harris said, what Secretary Austin has said. For as long as those barn doors remain open, I don't know why Israel would take those warnings seriously.
So he's right. I don't know why Israel would take those warnings seriously either. So keep in mind, as we're watching this devastation unfold in northern Gaza and now move to southern Gaza, the huge civilian toll, the children who have been killed, all of that, it's 22,000 US-made bombs that have been dropped on this population in an incredibly short period of time.
Whoops, don't want that. There we go. So yeah, we don't really talk about just the rapidity with which shit is happening. Like how many tens of thousands of people have died, how many tens of thousands of bombs have been launched, and we're just willing to sell them more because money is good. What is it the Ferengis said? War is good for business. Damn Ferengis.
Ferengis. Yeah. Part of the reason I included that, I don't think they actually did. They mention the white phosphorus?
They did at the beginning.
Okay.
But
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah, it's
So
very evident that we sold, white phosphorus.
White phosphorus. And where was it used? Lebanon.
Yeah.
Not on fucking Hamas.
Yeah.
Across the border on civilians in Lebanon.
Yeah.
Trying to clear out civilian neighborhoods on the border.
And for anyone who doesn't know, white phosphorus gets on your skin, gets in your lungs, and it just burns everything. I believe it's caustic. And so if you breathe it in even a little bit, you're probably going to have like breathing problems for the rest of your life. It's wicked shit.
Yeah. And so part of the reason I included that is of course, right, with this ongoing stuff, there's evidence of us giving them weapons to commit war crimes, which is a very clear line of responsibility that comes back to not just the U.S. providing diplomatic cover, not just, all of that stuff, but actual physically complicit in genocide by providing the weapons to commit war crime.
And we can't say that we don't know what they're going to do with it. I was reading that we had some people who managed to get into Gaza through abnormal means, and they were basically just doing some investigating, and they reported back, oh yeah, here's all the things that are war crimes for sure, and there's no denying them anymore because we are people on the ground witnessing them.
Yeah, for real. And I really like the guy they brought on, and he said that had resigned from his post, I believe, in the UN or US. I think it might have been working for the US, right?
Yeah. Not 100% on that. Let me see.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was interesting because that exact thing has come up twice now, I think, previously in discussing people resigning from the U.S. government, their positions in the U.S. government over this. And every single one of them has said, well, yeah, we do a lot of things that a lot of people think are shady, but that are, feel like advance American empire. And that's really not what I have a problem with. Right. What I have a problem with is that on this Israel issue, there is no discussion permitted. We are supposed to, and to me, this speaks of how the media basically, I'm starting to realize the media claimed all these transgressions by Trump and his administration to just generate newsprint, right?
Yeah.
But also to exhaust us. So when we hear these things, we don't think that they're a big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though he was doing none of those things, right? Or maybe they were exaggerating what he was actually doing, or maybe he was doing heinous shit. I'm sure it's a little bit of everything, right? All of the above.
Yeah.
But I do think that in a lot of ways, they kind of oh my God, he's doing this thing that's so terrible, so that we just kind of warm up to the fact that shit happens. And then, hey, our government, he's an authoritarian. He doesn't what he says goes. And then, I told friends that called, I had several friends. Trump was such a big deal. I had friends that I hadn't talked to in years call me because they know that I'm fucking politically literate.
Yeah.
And I said the same thing. I was like, well, I'm going to kind of like put my faith in the fact that we still kind of have checks and balances. Now, change of Supreme Court, some other things that went down. They threw away what little integrity they had, among other things. But he didn't just have an administration that did whatever he wanted. In fact, I think in some ways, as we've discussed, that was problematic. When he had people in his administration for defense and Secretary of State and stuff being like, no, we're going against his policy. When you have military officers disobeying their commander in chief for political reasons, right? That's deeply, deeply, deeply problematic.
It is
at the same time, here's Biden basically doing what they claim Trump did, which was be authoritarian and allow only his word to be what his administration does.
Oh yeah, executive order. This was not run through anybody. He just made the sale.
Yep. Yeah. Despite the fact that Congress actually does have, I think, a law on the books to make you assess whether your weapons are going to someone who violates human rights.
It's basically like a cool down period for purchasing a gun, but the opposite.
Kind of similar.
Yeah,
it's a background check of sorts, right?
Yeah.
It really is. But we're just saying Israel doesn't need a background check because we don't care.
Because they're our friend.
Or as Robert Kennedy Jr. likes to remind everybody of why he supports Israel, which is antithetical to his whole anti-war thing. He basically had to get rid of it. Because with this whole shit, he's just so fucking such a Zionist piece of shit. He couldn't fucking even pretend to give a shit about Palestinians long enough to get elected. So he sunk his own fucking campaign, the idiot.
Woo, Cornel West.
What's that?
Cornel West. Woo.
He sunk his campaign too. That's another subject for another day. At any rate, RFK Jr., you know, even what was I gonna say? Fuck. I lost it. God damn it. What?
Zionism?
No, before Zionism. Talking about fucking deep state and shit. Either way. Yeah, deep state, right? Authoritarians, shit like that.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Covering up or misleading us about, you know, various things in the government, trying to exhaust us.
Yeah. Oh, no. That's it. He refers to Israel as a aircraft carrier in the Middle East, which really kind of sets up the stuff we've talked about, stealing the natural gas, potentially building a Saudi pipeline to the Mediterranean, right? So that Saudi oil no longer has to go through the Strait of Hormuz, so we can just ignore Iran altogether.
Yeah.
And ensure that the U.S. maintains access to Saudi oil. They can mine some natural gas. I've even heard that there was a plan many decades ago to build a fucking competitor to the Suez Canal from the Red Sea. From what is it? The sea there on. There's a big major Israeli city on the Red Sea. I forget what it's called.
Come on, Matt.
I know. It's gonna be obvious when you say it.
Are you talking about the Gulf of Aqaba?
Aqaba?
Yeah.
No,
I don't know how to pronounce it.
I don't know the city in southern Israel, because Israel has very little land that touches the Red Sea.
Yeah.
There's a city down there. I forget what it's called.
I mean, if you're talking about like making a cut through and doing another canal, there's really no other places that make any sense.
Right. And well, Gaza was like a big chunk of the Israeli coast. Remember?
Yeah.
Like, it was basically about not quite half of the Mediterranean coast of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
They want that.
Of course they do.
They want to kill the Palestinians so the Palestinians don't eat fish that Israelis want to eat. They want to kill Palestinians so Palestinians don't use water Israelis want to use to water their fucking lawns or whatever. I don't know what the fuck golf course is, whatever. I just assume that Israel is basically a big country club.
I mean, to be fair, that's not too far off. Like they get, I think it's,
I've never been there, but yeah,
state paid education or you know, post-secondary education, state-funded housing, universal health care. They basically have all the shit that we should have, but we're giving them money for it. So let that sink in.
And we have been.
Yeah, for a long time.
For decades and decades and decades, billions and billions of dollars every year.
Yep.
It's a couple few
they get all the
billion
nice shit that we can't have.
That's right.
So,
All right, let's move on.
fuck those guys. Let's see. This is a cop.
Moving on to the cop out.
Moving on to the cop out. That is
Yeah,
Cop
so we did a
28.
great. I think our Monday episode was fantastic. We ran a full hour and a half,
Yeah.
talking about fucking climate issues. I thought we had a fairly coherent narrative,
We didn't talk
and we
about
totally fucking forgot to mention that Cop 28 had begun the day prior, I believe.
It was pretty boring from what I've read. So I mean,
They
I
all
really
are.
missed out on too much. But let's see. The main things is they took away a lot of the language about fossil fuels. Most of the language that use that has been taken out because, of course, the oil-bearing countries don't want people to stop using fossil fuels. One of their representatives even made a statement, or basically saying that that won't happen, and then had to retract it later on and say that it was a misrepresentation of what he actually said, and that of course
Was
it
this
would be
the Sheik that was basically like the fucking MC for the whole conference?
No, I don't believe so. It was
Because
another
they held this
representative. I
shit
forgot to
in
write it
fucking
down.
Dubai. Dude,
Yeah.
which is like a city that screams fossil fuels. I've been to Dubai. I've been
Didn't they
around
literally-
Dubai. I've studied Dubai, and I've spent a number of days in total in Dubai. And I feel like just learning the city, because that's what I do every time I'm going to travel somewhere. Like I fucking read a lot about it and all that shit. I've listened to podcasts on it and other things. Actually, I think it's is it Climate Town or one of the really popular YouTube channels for like urban design, urban planning issues.
Mhm.
Did a fantastic like analysis of Dubai. And James Howard Kunstler also did like a really great podcast a long time ago, and actually gave a lot of praise to Dubai because their public transit system is actually pretty effective for moving workers from where they live to where they work. So there are good things, but it's just fucking, it would not exist without fossil fuels.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I mean,
when
they
you look at
constructed a
Old
bunch
City
of
Dubai,
islands.
Old City Dubai was a fucking fishing village, dude.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fucking fishing village and like a small like trading post for like forever. It was never a big city until recently. So everything is fossil fueled. Everything.
Yeah, they literally built islands to increase tourism.
Their bus
like,
stops, which it's pretty cool because it does get hot as fuck there. But their bus stops are boxes with fucking air conditioning, dude.
I mean, makes sense to me if you're hot enough to kill people.
Or I mean, even think Chico. Like, no one use a bus on a fucking day that's 110 degrees because it's too fucking hot to sit on a bench in the sun.
It's true.
Now, if you had an air conditioning box, you might be enticed to. No, they would never do that because they'd be like, then the homeless will sit there.
Mm-hmm. They'll use the air conditioning.
We can't make people comfortable.
No,
So if we make people, because that's our attitude. How
will we force them into labor if they're comfortable?
Well, how do we force them into an establishment where they have to buy something and spend money and therefore pay taxes?
Yup, the third space is officially dead.
Oh yeah, no. Our public spaces have all been privatized, and I think the unhoused issue has been part of the justification for that. Speaking of totalitarian societies,
yes.
No, seriously, because you can't fucking go just like, I mean, you can go to the plaza for like a protest, but you can't actually like, like if they discourage, basically they make it hostile to just like hanging out.
Yeah. I mean, I know for a while it was surrounded by chain link fence, to keep people out of it. Like, okay. Well, what the hell good was making it if you're just going to keep people out?
Oh, yeah, and they claimed that there was some, like, serious maintenance issue that needed to be dealt with. They just fenced it off and kept it fenced off for, like, 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They denied everybody access to a space they pay for just to keep, like, a half a dozen fucking hobos from having, like, a pretty comfortable place to take a nap in the middle of the afternoon.
And honestly, if you're talking about, like, the nice parts of the year, which are becoming longer and longer, a place to bathe.
Yeah,
semi-inconspicuously. Just kind of,
right. Instead, most of them are fucking bathing in the creek and shit.
Yeah,
if that, a lot of them don't take fucking showers.
Mm-hmm.
Just fucking sucks, man. I guess the state has a program. They'll get a motel room like once a month just so they can fucking get a good night's rest in the shower. Anyway, we're talking about
that's literally the least we could do. So
Right.
yes, Al Gore said the world desperately needs to phase out fossil fuels as quickly as possible, but this obsequious draft reads as if OPEC dictated it word for word. It's even worse than many had feared. And of course, the Secretary General of OPEC, Al-Gai, I'm going to go with, called on members and allies last week to proactively reject any language that targeted fossil fuels rather than emissions. So yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, is they're just like, no, those two words in that order, forbidden.
Well, remember, we were supposed to be net zero by 2030.
Yeah.
And that's a few years away. And I heard they were talking about net zero for 2050. Net zero includes all of these really fucking, basically these lies, right? The bright green lies, like the, oh, well, this such and such a corporate, such and such a corporation paid such and such a corporate, a mega nonprofit, like nonprofit industrial complex organization to like get villagers together to plant like 1 million trees, but there's zero follow-up, no irrigation. So they plant a bunch of trees, but none of them survive.
Right. And so it's a net.
But they're like,
loss.
oh yeah, but and then they get to count that credit immediately, right? Like they don't like, okay, we're using fossil fuels to plant the trees. We can't start accumulating those credits for 3 years or 5 years, knowing that the forest is now established, and we can draw a little bit based on the carbon that it is. But they're like, no, you get the full value of its hypothetical, like peak carbon. That could take 50 years under perfect circumstances. And it's just a fucking scheme. So when they say net zero, they don't actually mean net zero. That's why they don't want them talking about fossil fuels. They just want to talk about net zero so that they can fucking continue to lie about it.
Yeah.
Carry
absolutely. Well, and then, the language is being used by OPEC, and they say that it's unacceptable that politically motivated campaigns put our people's prosperity and future at risk. And I think at this point, it's like, nah, man, not having these campaigns is going to for sure kill your people.
In Dubai, for sure.
Yeah.
They're some of those places, because it's humid in Dubai, because it's like a settlement on the sea, and there was a creek. Well, there used to be a fucking creek. It's now an estuary. Actually, you go to Old City, there's some really fucking cool spots. I actually hung out right by the water. And there's like I think it's a mosque, or some kind of civic building. Anyway, there's just like on the water side, it's fenced off from people, but like just fucking so many goddamn pigeons, bro. Like, I don't know. It was a colony of like 12,000 pigeons, 15,000 pigeons. And I watched pigeons like literally push each other off ledges to make space for themselves. Like they're just like, like, and I watched them fight and just like have a social life with each other. It was a surreal experience, man. Dubai is a fucking interesting place. But there was just mountains of bird shit too. It was fucking, and I bet they do just pay some people to go down there, collect it, and they'll fucking put it on their gardens or whatever, Yeah.
I mean, use everything you can.
Yeah, they not fucking sell everything.
Yeah.
Something that we don't do in America, even though we talk about free enterprise. It's like free enterprise if you want to lease a building from a landlord and then pay a bunch of money to contractors to fucking make it what you need it to be, and then pay a bunch of fucking fees and other like licenses and shit like that to the state or the city and the county.
I think my favorite part is that if the roof leaks, it's up to the tenant how to fix it. And I'm like, how about no? Because if I don't fix it, you're the one who's going to lose a building. You probably have insurance, but you're still going to lose the building, with black mold and all that shit.
Yeah,
the whole
why
system.
I think that's why the school my kids go to is seriously considering spending $8 million to basically make another insurance back office into a school, when the whole problem is that we're already in an insurance back office and it was never designed to be a school.
Yeah.
It was like, why are you moving to that one? Oh, because the landlord literally is like, we won't fix shit. And they got like moss, like rotting out facade and shit.
Yeah.
They don't want to spend any money on the building, and they shouldn't. But at the same time, like that should be illegal that a landlord's just like, nope, you give
Let
me
it rot.
money and then I don't do anything.
Yeah. That is literally a landlord at that point. Like, it's not
I mean,
a property manager or anything, or a property owner. They're just a
I-
lord who wants their their tithe.
yeah, I sent a letter to a PG&E had asked. This is an aside. PG&E had asked if I could provide some feedback on stuff.
Okay.
And so it was talking about PG&E and how can we improve our communications about programs and benefits. I'm just going to read it real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
My response was, you murdered over 100 people through your neglect and then use us to pay the bill by jacking our rates when the economy is already shit. Fuck PG&E. Utilities should be publicly owned and managed. Your shareholders should be publicly executed and their families should all have their wealth taken and redistributed. So that's my attitude.
Yeah. PG&E can't suck it.
Landlords too. Like, you're a
yeah.
shitty landlord, we should take your land.
Yeah.
Maybe stop short of executing you if it's
your first offense.
Yeah, first offense. I mean, because you did a shitty landlord's not necessarily killing someone. Now, if a shitty landlord is neglectful and kills some people, then maybe they should be publicly executed. But
public executions did help to prevent a lot of crime. And that's the thing is, like, we'll put people in jail and say it stops crime. And it's like, no, I mean, like, desperate people are desperate. But it's really the non-desperate people that need to be punished the most, because they didn't have to do that. Like, they could have had their bread and their butter. But no, they wanted everyone's bread and butter. And that should be a mental illness. Again, I'm going to go back to it. That should be considered a mental illness. Put in the books. We should start, like, putting people into nice padded rooms who are just like, I must accumulate everything, or I got to own it all. Fuck.
I think expropriation through eminent domain or by force is like the only real way we're going to ever try and achieve some kind of equity when it comes to the disparity in not just land ownership, but like the ability to use land. Because it's all held. So we were talking about how our public spaces are not even really public because the private entities just buy the politicians and then make public spaces inhospitable to people, to force people to go into the pay for establishments to do anything outside of their own fucking house.
We pretty much fail to fund parks every year. And usually it's the police department paying a whole bunch of money to be like, well, if we do this, then we can't give as much money to the police. And it's like, no, these are two separate things. Like, we will take out a bond. It says so. If you actually read it, it says that we'll take out a bond. Yeah, that's money that our children are going to have to pay. That fucking sucks. But it's completely separate from you. It's got nothing to do with your budget. We can pass this and give you a bigger budget if we really want to.
Yep. And I'm also for debt jubilees, but that's beyond what a city can do.
Yeah. But back to the topic.
Yeah. Unacceptable, politically motivated campaigns put our people's prosperity and future at risk.
And we were talking about
prosperity at risk to expropriate the landlords. But
we were talking earlier, though, how if the choice is don't save our civilization, make the planet uninhabitable for us. The planet doesn't care, as we'll get to later. The planet doesn't care. We care. But in order to keep it, hospitable, maybe we might have to just like pay some countries to be like, nah, man, keep that shit in the ground. We'll figure out alternatives, and tell countries with massive forests like, hey, you just keep those forests. Like, nobody needs that lumber that bad. Not if the whole planet's going to burn. And
and as we were talking about it, there is a fund, and the name escapes me. I think it was created during the Paris Climate Accord, or the COP in Paris, right?
The loss and destruction. Does that sound right?
Maybe a little familiar, but there was a fund that like wealthier countries were supposed to pay into, which like provided development monies for alternatives to cutting forests or plowing up grasslands or whatever it is, right? Basically, it's like conservation money. It's like, here, we will give you money to help you develop your economy for tourism and conservation instead of like extraction. But the reality is that capitalism and industrialism itself, whether it's capitalist or socialist. Industrialist civilization is the fucking problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and there
Yeah.
are countries that have come to the realization on their own that the tourism dollars that will continue in perpetuity are far more important than, short-term gains. It's a rare thing, but it happens, and they don't have to be forced into it. So, like you have countries with like coral reefs and stuff like that, and they're like, oh yeah, we're very interested in maintaining those because a lot of people come here and spend a whole bunch of money to go scuba diving. That kind of runs
Right,
our
but you
economy.
can't maintain the coral reefs if everybody else is pumping fucking fossil fuels in because the whole ocean gets acidified.
And acidifying the ocean. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so the only like real place these people have is shit like the COP and the UN and all that. And it's like it's really not doing much. And so so you have a whole lot of the ocean and island nations that are just like, hey guys, we're gonna be fucking gone.
Yeah, I did see some coverage, and some of the island nations came back, and we're just like, yep, cool. We're in the same place we were last year, in the same place we were the year before. Like, you guys don't fucking care about us and our ocean. Like, we're already like noticing like the water's 6 inches higher or 8 inches higher than it normally is, or whatever.
Yep.
At high
And not all of them are Dubai. They can't all afford to make new islands.
Yeah. Or build big barriers. I did want to say, like, this kind of like, as long as we all are like competitive amongst each other, like nationalism made nation competitive against nation.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the individualism of the American experience, I think puts individual versus individual. We can't get to even to this point where we're like, hey, if I do this, it affects you, and we can't bring ourselves to give a shit about that. We can't get ourselves to give a shit about Palestinian babies fucking dying and children getting fucking crushed by buildings that are being bombed. Like, we just can't get people to give a shit. And I was thinking, like, there's that whole kind of like, oh, the whole world came together because there was this alien threat, right? Like,
Yeah. Nope. We just die.
no, and I was thinking that, and then I'm like, because I thought I heard some people speculate, um, sorry, yeah, some people speculating that the whole alien thing was like could potentially like, oh, there's aliens, we could all work together, right? And I'm like, no, the reason they're talking about UFOs, in my opinion, and this is again an aside, in my opinion, I think it dawned on me the other day that the reason they're talking so much about UFOs and UFO leaks and this, that, and the other thing is because it allows the public to grapple with the deep state and come to an understanding of the existence of the deep state in a way that is measured and controlled, so as we don't actually look at the real things that the deep state does that cause our daily oppression, right? So like UFOs, we can actually say, yeah, there's a deep state. They were covering up UFOs, right? Oh, there's a deep state. Yeah, they assassinated JFK and Martin Luther King. Like, those things are okay to say now, but they don't want you talking about, oh, the CIA funded like some jihadis in fucking Syria, and then the Department of Defense Intelligence Agency funded some other jihadis, and those jihadis were fighting each other. So we were just basically funding a bunch of Muslims to kill each other. And that was
really
our tax dollars that did that. We wonder why we have inflation. We just print money to fucking pay jihad. Basically, like, you want to add like feign moral outrage over bum fights? We did basically the same thing. It was called the Syrian Civil War. Like, we just basically paid people to fucking murder each other. Oh boy.
And with regards to the alien things and everyone coming together, I'm pretty sure you'd have people rooting for the aliens up until the moment that the aliens like blew them up with a fucking like
highly sophisticated
lasers and shit like that. Yeah, or like got into their brains and blew their heads up or whatever. Like, you'd have people that are just like, no, the aliens are good up until then, and then they'd all be dead, and the rest of us would be like, oh fuck. But yeah, I'm not so convinced that we could even get over an existential threat in like fast forward. Because this is an existential threat.
One where the aliens are like, you guys better come together or we'll obliterate you. And we'd be like, I don't know. I saw Tom, he was drinking Bud Light. I don't know if I trust that queer.
Goddamn Bud Light people with Kid Rock.
All right, let's finish this article and call it a night.
Yeah, man. There's one more we'll do just really shortly. Let's see. Yeah, so here is the Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS instead of Oasis. Kind of cool. They basically said we will not sign our own death certificate as they refused to sign the agreement as it currently stands. And they do not, we cannot sign on to text that does not have strong commitments to phasing out fossil fuels.
Fair.
Yeah. And I mean, we didn't really do that great of a job this time around. Let's see.
I think they honestly, I think, you know how we keep talking about us cresting the limits to growth and how there's all these fractures and kind of like a lot of these really bad things like Israeli genocide against Palestinians. The genocide's not new. That's what Gaza being an open air prison, that's what that does. Like when they shoot to maim and murder like medics and shit, and they seek to make people's lives miserable, that's part of it, like just a slow campaign of genocide. That's what that has been. They've kept them poor, etc., so forth. And so like a lot of these things are just kind of coming to the fore for a lot of people. Like you didn't realize that these things were happening. Just the masks coming off, and not even really the masks coming off. I think that they just don't care about everybody knowing about it because we're at that peak resource stage where like people are far more concerned and ask people what their primary concern is. It's never, oh my God, babies in Palestine, right? It's often, if it's even their kids, it's their kids only in a fucking very controlled way that advances a particular economic agenda behind it. Right. My kids are being indoctrinated by woke people, but I'm, the one who actually knows what we need. What we need is Tuttle twins talking about free enterprise, right? Like whatever their definition of free enterprise is, like landlords owning everything, right? And no matter how bad that screws people, they'll still advocate for it because that's what they believe is the best thing because they're not really thinking about it. But if you check polls, people say they care about economics more than anything else. So they don't need to fucking pretend that we're going to fix the fucking fossil fuel issue and the climate change issue because we're not. Because what we want right now is cheaper oil. Ask anybody, do you wish that gas was $1.50 less than it is right now? Not one person would fucking say no. I think gas should be $10 a gallon so people stop driving.
I got one. It's me though. And I do say it frequently, actually, because our gas is too cheap in the United States. It should cost a hell of a lot more. It should hurt to buy a big truck.
Not just that it should hurt to buy a big truck. We should actually learn to appreciate the fact that there's 10,000 man hours in a gallon of gasoline. 10,000.
Yeah. And you're using it to go to the store or, go to the, or just drive around. I don't know how many people actually just go on drives anymore. I hope the answer is very few. But like, if you watch all the old movies, like back in the 50s and shit like that, they're just going for a cruise. We're going to cruise. And I know that people still do street racing. I can hear it from my house. People like NASCAR and shit like that.
Dude, when I was in LA,
I was wasteful.
I get it. It's LA, right? But like, my youngest cousin who like was going to see friends and do other things, she would go somewhere, be gone for 20 minutes. Presumably most of that was driving, come home, go to her room, change, do whatever, do all that shit. She would go back to her car. She'd drive somewhere. She'd be gone for an hour and a half. You have to assume she didn't just drive like a half mile up and stop and spend most of it. You have to assume she probably drove for a good portion of the time she was gone.
Yep.
And it was just like in her car, drive somewhere, drive back. I'm like, first of all, I'm like, God, that's a lot of money. But also at the same time, like, yeah, that's how most people conduct their lives, dude. Like, we are a rare breed that, like, we hate driving.
I fucking hate it.
I hate driving. I fucking hate it. I want nothing more than my fucking daughters to go to the school across the street.
Yeah. Why don't you?
Or the junior high school that's like a few blocks up. And even then, I'm like, God, even the junior high school, we're going to have to drive to. It's like a mile and a half. It's like, it's a little too much at 7:30 in the morning to expect them to fucking walk, or 7:15 walk to school, right?
Yeah.
Not
Get them
really.
bikes. Get them bikes. Teach them how to
Yeah, I
move.
need to teach the kids how to bike. We got one more a clip here. Loss and damage.
Yeah, pretty short clip. It's not really a clip, it's an article. So yeah, I just looked up, the highlights and lowlights of COP28 and loss and damage fund. They finally agreed on it, but it's funded at $700 million, which is less than 2%. So it's a factor of 500. Sorry, yes, 0.2%. So it is a factor of 500 too small. For reference, the U.S. thus far has given to Ukraine in direct aid $70 billion. $70 billion.
So 100 times that.
Yeah.
Right, there's 2 more zeros than 70 billion?
Yeah. So 100 times as much.
100 times that, which is a pool that is supposed to have multiple contributors, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it is. It is. And on the low end, it's supposed to be every year $100 billion from some of the richer nations. So, like, the U.S. has almost gotten there just helping to fight a war. I mean, supposedly, for the existence of democracy, but I think, most of us can acknowledge we're not in one.
So the estimates are between 100 and 580 billion.
Correct.
But then they're like, oh, we'll just make it 700 million.
Yeah.
So
that's all that's been pledged so far.
And I was talking to my kids actually about this the other day. It was the two things, and them two mathematical things that people need to fucking really learn to wrap their heads around.
Mm-hmm.
One, the exponential function. Mm-hmm. You need to understand growth rate in percentage and what that means in terms of how quickly things double.
Yeah.
And understand what doubling a double means, and doubling and doubling and doubling, understand the exponential function, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, the other one is to truly understand how fucking big the number 1 billion is, or 1 trillion. To really try to understand how big that fucking number is.
I saw a good video where they used grains of rice. And, it started off with here's 100, here's 1,000, here's 10,000. We can't fit any more on the plate. So each of these one grains now represents 10,000. And they just kept going, and they're like, so even at $1 billion, our plate's very full. And this is us taking $10,000 away from a billionaire. And it's one little grain, you barely even notice it. So these people are so rich that they could just do whatever the hell they wanted, and we're just
actually
stuck with crumbs.
Pretty good visual for expropriation or just taxation, right?
Yeah,
we're not even talking about expropriating. We're literally saying, hey,
pay your fair share.
Yeah, exactly. You want to roll the music? You got a little more.
Yeah, I got a little more. But then I will get it going. Let's see. We got let's see. Fossil fuel language taken out. We've already talked about that though. And then just not a whole lot of leaders from first world countries showed up. We sent John Kerry and Kamala Harris. At least the UK sent their president and their prime minister. That's pretty good. That's basically our president and our vice president. Let's see. And then they only list a few other countries, but Vladimir Putin was obviously hesitant to be there for reasons, wanted for war crimes and whatnot. Yeah, but basically the two main things that were quote won are not actually won at all. They're kind of underfunded, or you can have language that basically says oh yeah, we'll our countries could cut back on fossil fuels, but unless you actually say well, we kind of have to, then we're fucked. Just fucked.
We're fucked, man. So fucked. And I think these are all just kind of what I was saying, right? We don't need to pretend that the Conference of Parties actually means anything for slowing climate change. So much so that we hold it in a city like fucking Dubai, and which is basically it's the cultural capital of the oil money.
Mm-hmm.
And you hold it there, and you have some sheik there who's the MC, and you have the minister of OPEC determining or being a stakeholder in the language.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the language is non-binding. Let people say whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
No, you can't. Right? If you say from the river to the sea, they call you an anti-Semite. No, I just say fuck the Semites. Fuck them all. Like, seriously, if they're going to call you an anti-Semite for fucking trying to plead for humanity and plead for an end to fucking violence, then you might as well just be. And I think that we just get so fucking caught up in just all this bullshit, like, oh, all these climate protesters, yeah, we're protesting. It's like, dude, I was doing these protests in fucking 10, 11, 12 fucking years ago, dude, and we haven't stopped anything. Yeah, so I'm over it, dude. It's hospice care time, dude.
Hell yeah, man.
Oh yeah.
And
really,
a slightly better place.
There is no better place than here and now. And remember, folks, when liberty dies, it dies
with thunderous applause.
But not for long, because Monday we're talking about surveillance. Join us. Ooh. I just made that up. We might not.
We could.
Maybe. We're going to talk about it sometime soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.